if we carry on at that rhythm, it's not going to be good. Interestingly, there is a nice peak there. You know what is that peak? That was the 1 week extension. So it has slowed down a bit, the drop, but we are back to normal now. Okay, so it's not good enough. As you know, I have a busy schedule for the summer. I wouldn't like to have to mark too many retakes, and I'm sure you do as well, so please make an effort. Still, some statistics: 174 students have passed IT fundamentals, 162 making things, 116 web prototyping, and 80 students are still on course for getting 100%. So well done to them. I hope that this number will stay, but you can notice that every week there are 3 or 4 dropping. So again, there is 8 weeks left, so we could finish with only 50 students at 100%. So you can see the trend. Activity 13 is due next week, and the activity which was proposed last week by Jonathan, only 4 people have attempted it, and so I cannot really give you any feedback on that one because there's nothing to say. However, I will give you a bit of feedback on activity 13 because very few people have done it and the deadline is next week, so you may. And I'm interested in getting the numbers higher, so let's hope that will help. Okay, so the activity 13 was on using MySQL with PHP.
That's bad.
So the first comment was more someone who was really pleased by discovering this technology. What you could do with MySQL and how it could be integrated with PHP. So if you haven't discovered it yet, I hope that will motivate you as well. Give it a go. Yeah. So please use it on your website. Now that you know how to make money out of your website, make it attractive as much as you can. I had a question from someone who had issues regarding the primary key, because they put the primary key as being incremented automatically. It should be. However, when they try to enter a record, and since it was automatic, they put null in the records for the primary key, expecting that automatically that would go to the right number fields, including the primary key. And since they didn't have any value for the primary key, put null. Actually, don't put the primary key in the field when you are inserting. Automatically, a value will be set. Okay. Another question is someone created a small database as specified, and they tried to use MySQL in order to insert new values, and they had an error message when they type this command, and they couldn't find out what was the problem. And I think I have found it. Is that the third field is founded, so I guess it's a date or a number at least. And the fact that the number they are providing is between quotes, I assume that it has been interpreted as a string of character. Therefore, the format is not matching, and you will get an error message. So just a silly mistake. But that's the only comments I got. So not many people did the activity yet. Most people did it very well. I had these 3 comments that I have addressed, and I hope that many of you will submit by the deadline because we need to get the number highest. Okay, so today is the last part of the toolkit I wanted to present you this year in order to build interesting and dynamic websites. So that's what I'm presenting today is called Ajax for asynchronous JavaScript and XML. So the A of Ajax is asynchronous, which means that when you are trying to update something on a web page, when you were using PHP, you wanted to update something or getting some dynamic value, you had to reload the web page. Okay? And we know that with PHP, you had this PHP engine running where your server is. So you clicked for updating and you have to wait. In Ajax, it's not the case at all. Okay? If you are using the Ajax framework, you don't have to wait. The web page stays where it is, and it's only the part which is affected by the changes which is going to be updated, but it's going to be updated in its own time. Okay? You can still navigate around the page and check things. Ajax is not a technology, it's more of a framework, web development methods. And so the aim is to increase interactivity of your website. As I said, it's asynchronous, so you don't need to reload the web page in order to have it updated, which means that as a user experience, it's much more enjoyable. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So you all know about Google Maps. How many of you has a Google Map on their web page? Nobody yet? So let's have an example. So I've chosen the British Museum. And here is your Google Map. So you're familiar with it. You can zoom and do everything you want with it. But you can see that when I'm doing that, I'm not reloading the web page. Okay? The whole thing is staying there, and maybe there will be a bit of delay when I'm moving depending on the speed of the connection, but when I'm doing things, I'm not reloading the web page. I know that you have understood the IT Toolbox philosophy, and when you see something cool on the net, you would like to add that to your web page. Okay, that would be nice to have a dynamic map. So one way of doing it is you Google and learn all about adding a map in your web page. Or what you can do is just view source, and you have all the code of that web page. Okay? So what I have done, I have extracted the file, and I've removed all the stuff which doesn't look very useful, okay? Because, for example, all that stuff, all the menus about British Museum, I'm not interested in. I'm just interested in the bit with the map, okay? So I have simplified the file, and I've created this one, which not on its for some reason is not working on this computer. That's not a good start. Open with why cannot open that? Okay, so it was working on my computer, so you can see that I've removed a lot of stuff. There's only really 30 lines which are useful when we are removing the start and the finish. So you can see that there is something which is called a script, JavaScript. Here you have an HTML address, and if you try it in your browser, I'm getting to Google Map. Okay, so that's the secret. So if you find the map you want, you can get the address here and put it in your web page. So you can have a quick look. Here we have an address. Okay, so if we go back on the British Museum website, you can see the address. Okay, so that's the field which allow you to add so that's the field which allow you to have this information, this tag about your point. Here you have basically the address of the Google Map web page. You still have a bit more information here which maps Google again, but you can see that it's not much in the code. Okay, so by spending 10 minutes on it, you could integrate that just by doing a copy and paste and have your Google Map in your web page. Obviously, you can go also on the Google Map website and learn the more academic way how to do it. But you need to be able to do a bit of hacking as well. When you see something nice, try to find out how you can get it for yourself. Here it is. There's a problem of browser. So that's my version, where I've removed everything which was really specific to the British Museum, and I've kept only the Google Map with a different thing that I can understand. Okay, so as an exercise, I think that would be good for all of you to create this very basic web page and then integrate these instructions in yours so that you have a nice Google Map and all what you need if your web page includes an address. Okay, this web page, by the way, doesn't have either the PHP suffix nor the HTML one. Okay, so it has another one which is the ASPX. So that's basically the Microsoft format. Okay, you know that Microsoft always likes to take a nice format and add some specific features which make it incompatible with the others. And so they have done it here, and they have created a format called SPX. If you look at it, more than 95% of it is just HTML. Okay, so you will understand it. And if you have to use that format in the future, it will be straightforward to move there. Okay, another things which can be done with JavaScript is, let's have a look. So that's, you start typing, and we have options, and it's completing. So where are we going today? Miami, Florida. Sounds good. Is there still a flight for tonight? No, that's not just hotels. Okay. So, but you know this feature, you start typing and it's offering suggestions. So that's something which is done in JavaScript, and that's something you will be studying for the activity that I'm going to be offering. Again, that can be a nice feature added to your web page. And obviously now that everybody is using that, each time you are doing a search, whatever server you are using, Google, Amazon, or anywhere, anybody else, everybody is using that. It's quite recent. I think 5 years ago, nobody was using it. Now everybody is using it. So you should be using it as well. Okay. So now that you know, you have a couple of examples about what Ajax can do for you. So let's go more into the details. So Ajax is basically putting web technologies together in a unique framework. So it's using JavaScript, so that's the Ja of Ajax, and XML, which is the X of Ajax, and we should say that it's adding also HTML and CSS. So JavaScript really is handling the client side, so that's the user, and capturing events. So you are the user, you are moving your mouse, you are clicking on things. JavaScript is going to capture this information and transfer this information in HTML, in a XML format on a server, and this server is going to use the information. So in order to do that, you need to call a function which is called XML HTTP request. Okay, so that's the key. It was initially developed for Internet Explorer, and now all the different browsers are using it. So it's not always Microsoft doing bad things. Sometimes they are doing good things as well. And as I said, Ajax is using XML, the XML format, in order to communicate through JavaScript. So you remember that when we are using PHP, it's a bit complicated because your browser cannot understand PHP. So everything is processed remotely using a PHP preprocessor, okay? Which at the end is going to send you an HTML file. In the case of JavaScript, your browser has a JavaScript processor. Okay, so everything is done locally. Except obviously if you are connecting to a database and you need to connect to the database. But your browser can understand the JavaScript which is embedded in a HTML file. So typically, when you are using Ajax, JavaScript is going to create what's called a XML HTTP request object, initialize it with all the information which is required, and send it to the server. And your script is carrying on, is not waiting for the reply from the server. It's making a request, and you carry on working on your page. And when the request has been satisfied, the information is going back to your page, and your page is updated. But for you, everything is transparent. You don't have to wait. And so the server is going to do the processing remotely, and this processing can be done using any type of technology. It can be done using PHP or other programming languages. Okay, but you are not waiting for the processing, and you are not aware of what processing is going on. And as I said, when the data are sent back to your browser, which is the client, JavaScript automatically gets the message and is going to update your web page. And what is refreshed is not the whole web page, it's just the area which is involved in the update. Okay, so again, you want a smooth experience for you, the user. So when you are using JavaScript, typically you have a front end, so that's in your browser, and that is in JavaScript for doing the request. The backend that's on the server is going to process some type of request and send you the response back. And as I said, on the server, you will have some program doing the processing. It can be PHP, Ruby, Perl, but it could be any other programming language, C++, Java, whatever, you name it. And as I said, JavaScript is receiving the data and updating the web page, just updating the part affected by the new data. And usually, because we are using Ajax, the information is transmitted using an XML format. Okay, it's not an absolute requirement, but if you want to do some nice and tidy Ajax development, you will be using XML. So JavaScript, as the name can suggest, is a scripting language. So it's a programming language, first of all, but a scripting language is a simple programming language. Okay, it's not a fully fleshed programming language. It can only do certain things. And also it's an interpreted programming language. So it's not compiled. Okay, so you are writing it, and line by line, the instructions are interpreted, executed by the machine, and going to the next line. So which means that that type of languages are much slower than a compiled language where everything has been transformed in machine code before execution. Scripts are, in your web page, scripts are embedded as plain text. Okay, as I said, it's not compiled, so it's not going to be in some binary format. So in practice, it's very simple to execute. You don't have to worry because when you have a compiled language, if you have one error, you will not manage to compile your whole code. When it's an interpreted one, you are going to execute each line separately, and when you get a line which is not correct, it will just stop. Okay, but you can still execute everything before. It's obviously platform independent because it's not machine code, it's just ASCII code. But the drawback is that it's going to be slower than a compiled code. And since it's a strict scripting language, you will not have all the features of a standard programming language. So JavaScript was developed in 1995 for old browser called Netscape. I don't know if any of you have used it. That was still quite a few years ago, almost a decade. The name of JavaScript, you have the script, which is good. It's a scripting language. And then there is a Java bit. And Java bit would make you think that it's related to the other programming language called Java. Actually, they are unrelated. Okay, JavaScript is not Java. And actually, they are very different languages. So it's a bit misleading. However, the way the commands are written, the format, the fact that you are using a semicolon at the end of the line and stuff like that, means that the syntax is quite similar to Java or C++. Okay, when you are going to have some if statements that will look almost like a Java or C++ command. But it has nothing to do with Java otherwise. So one of the limitations is that the script is in the is in your web page and is visible. Okay, when we took the example of the British Museum one, we could see the code, and I was able to copy it and use it on my web page. Okay, So it means that the code is available to anybody. Anybody can take it. We saw that in the case of PHP, that was the opposite. Nobody can see your code because you only see the output of your code. So it has advantages. If you are more into open source mode, you are sharing everything to the world. On the other hand, if you want to make money out of your code, that's not the right way to go. For security reasons, the scripts cannot access your hard disk. Okay? Otherwise, it would be too easy to write some kind of virus. Someone is going to log in on your web page. There is a nice little piece of JavaScript which says go to hard disk, delete everything, and that would be very nasty. So, in order to make sure that that kind of stuff is not going to happen, you cannot access data on the hard disk. You have to go through a server if you want to collect data. Since the script is not platform dependent, it means that it cannot take advantage of your platform. Okay, you may have a supercomputer with some great multi-core processors, with some graphic cards and so on. JavaScript cannot know that you have that, and you cannot take advantage of these features because your code is going to work on any machine. And finally, the language doesn't have all the functionalities that a proper programming language has. So it means that if you want to build large applications, you will find things which will be missing. Okay, so it's really typically made for small applications on a web page. Okay, so how do you integrate your JavaScript in your web page? It's very simple. You are going to use a tag called script. You are going to specify that it's of type JavaScript. Then between those tags, you are going to write your code in the JavaScript programming language. And obviously you close your tag script. So in this very simple example, we have a command which is document write, which allow you to print some text in your web page. You can print some standard text, or you can even use HTML commands within between your codes, which will be interpreted as HTML. And you can see that the statements end with a semicolon, as you would do in C++ and Java. And similarly, again, to C++ and Java, if you want to have comments, you can use a double slash or slash stars. Okay, so as I said, it's a programming language, a limited programming language, but still it's a limited programming language. It has some data types. So we have strings, number, and booleans. And using that, you can create arrays and classes. You have all the operator and control statements that you use usually in programming. You have some mathematical routines. If you want the user to input some value, you are going to use the prompt command, which is going to return a value, in this case username, that you can use in your code. And you can even define your own functions. Okay, so it's still a programming language with many features, but you don't have everything that you would have in a fully fledged programming language such as Java or C++. Okay, so that's the JavaScript part. Okay, and this year we don't want you to create some new JavaScript code. We want you to use or adapt code that you will find on the net, okay, or that I will be providing. So you don't need to understand every single line, just the main functions, and use it, edit it slightly. through a trial and error manner. So XML is basically the X in the Ajax framework. And XML stands from Extensible Markup Language. And XML looks a lot like HTML, which is good news because you already know a lot about HTML. And actually, the latest version of HTML are part of XML. Okay? So the two technologies have converged. And here is a typical XML document. The thing in XML is that you are creating yourself the tags. Okay? So everything is organized using tags. So I want to write a note to my mom, and I'm going to create a tag note that I'm going to close. So what is inside those two tags is the note itself. And I will create 3 tags, to, from, and body, in order to structure the information that I'm sending. So here is my XML code. And because of that structure, I will be able to extract the information quite easily. If I want to know who is sending that note, I just have to scan and find what is between the 2 and /2 tags. Okay, so here is a piece of code that would be used in order to read my XML. So it's using JavaScript in this case. And basically I'm using, so as I said, we need to open first we need to open the document and do the request. When the document is available, you are going to extract the information which is within the different fields. So here I have the field to, from, message, and I'm going to extract using the tags to, from, and body. Okay. So using this tag, my web page is able to read that document which is in XML. So I'm able to extract what is in the to, from, and body tags, and I'm going to use this information in order to display it in my web page. Okay, and here that's my HTML part of the web page, and I'm going to write down the 3 fields that I've just extracted from my file. Okay. And that would be the outcome. So here we have a very basic JavaScript extracting the data from a very short and simple XML file and using this information in order to display it on my web page. So as I said, in order to do some Ajax, you need this command which has a very long name, XML HTTP request. Okay, and there's, depending on the browser you are using, or let's say if you are using a modern browser, you are going to use this line, new XML HTTP request. If you are using an older browser, you may need to use that one if you are using Internet Explorer 6 or 5. Okay, so typically you want your web page to be accessible by any browser. Okay, you don't want just people with the latest technology to see your content. So at the top of your script, you will have this if-else statement. So you are going to first check what is the browser that you are dealing with. So if it's the one which can understand XML HTTP request, you are going to do new HTTP request. If not, you are going to try the alternative. And hopefully any browser will be able to read your web page in Ajax. So once this object has been created, you need to connect to a server. So you will have 3 parameters: method, URL, and async for saying that it's asynchronous. You don't want to wait for the reply from the browser. And you are going to send some content. And as we said in PHP, you have 2 modes of communication: the post and the get. Okay. And then you will have this function response.xml, which is going to deal with the information which is returned by the remote server. Okay, so let's look at a web page I've created. You can recognize that it's mine because it's always have a very stylish look. So which planet has a ring? I click on the button, Saturn. Well done. I knew that some of you knew it. So that's simple JavaScript is there. So here is the content. So you can see that I am doing initially my XML HTTP request. I haven't written it there here. And I have a function which is going to read a file called answer.txt, so that when the person clicks the button answer, the content of this file is going to be displayed. Okay, so here I'm reading the file and extracting the information. And here, when there is a click, I'm writing that information. Okay. So a very simple code doing a very simple thing. But you can see that it's not very complicated. You don't need to understand every single line, but you can spot the ones which are critical for your application. So here, I am checking if the server has sent the answer, has responded to my request. So that's why I'm checking using the tag for. So has it completed? If it has completed, it's going to run that function. Okay. So that was just a brief introduction about Ajax. So I think you know enough to give it a go, really. So in the activity this week, you will have a quiz with some technical questions. You are used to that. And I will provide you a couple of JavaScripts, and I want you to study them. Again, you don't need to understand every single line, but just have a feel about what they do. And I want you to adapt them, to change them into another application. Okay? So I have this first script where I'm typing a letter, as we have seen on the Google application, and automatically you will get suggestions. Okay? So I'm providing you with a script for that one, so you will know exactly how it works. What is behind this feature that is now everywhere when you have a search box. So that's the first one I want you to study. I mean, the source is there. Okay, there is no secret. You cannot hide anything in JavaScript. And you can see it's not very long either. The next application I want you to look at is my Saturn one. Okay. So I want you to basically to write a little quiz, but with more than one question. A web page with one question is a bit boring, so I want you to do something more interesting. But I give you the code for one, and now you need to adapt it in order to do a few questions. Where is it? So I'm providing you a couple of JavaScripts. You will be studying them, and then you are going to modify them in order to fulfill the requirements of the activity. Okay? So that's all for today. So today is my last lecture on this module. I will not see you again this year. Hopefully I will see you next year in a level 2 module. So enjoy the other lectures, and next week is game development 2. Thank you. Hi. Yes. So what is your problem with activity 12? Yeah. Okay, so can you just send me an email with more details?